Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Scheich, and I am the editor of Farm Journal's Pork. I also have the pleasure of serving as second vice president of the Livestock Publications Council and get to serve on the education committee with Angie Denton, who so kindly helps organize all of our coffee collaboration Zoom details over in her role there at Kansas State University. Also excited to see several of our education committee members on today, as well as many others from the livestock publications industry and beyond. And I know this is a topic that quite a few people, it doesn't really matter what you publish or what you work in, but we'll have value from this Zoom today. So just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. This is being recorded, and so we will share the Zoom video on YouTube later. So if you have some of your colleagues who weren't able to attend but could benefit from this, please feel free to watch social media for when that comes out and share it. I also encourage you to ask questions, because this is set up to be a collaborative opportunity for us to be able to listen to one of our own share some of their thoughts and perspectives about a topic of interest, but then also for you guys to ask the questions that you may have. And if they go beyond the scope of what we're talking about today too, that's always great too. So feel free to ask those in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end of our session this morning. Or be ready to ask questions at the end. I would also love it if you guys could share a little bit about yourself. It's kind of fun to do some little introductions over in the chat to the side as well, just so we know who's joining us. And maybe there's somebody new that's never been on before. It's a great opportunity for you to see who some of the folks who attend these regularly are, so you can get to know them as well. So with that, I did want to offer up, Stacy, do you have any announcements or anything from an LPC standpoint that you would like to make? Stacy Fox is our executive director of LPC.
Yes, thanks so much, Jennifer. What a fantastic turnout. I love to see all these names on here, and just wanted to let you know we're working on our membership directory. So if you have heard from me and haven't filled out that information yet, we'd love to get that rolling. I know that is something that has been a huge request, so we want to get that out to you in the next few weeks, and it's all going to be online, but that way you can all connect with other LPC members. And if, contact information changes, we can do that really easily in an online format. So if you haven't heard from me yet, you will this week. And if you have, thank you so much for those of you that have already completed that. It was great to see so many of you at Ag Media Summit. We also, I know that we have pretty well established, everyone who's been interested in serving on a committee has been assigned out to those committees. But if you do have any interest in serving on an LPC committee and you're a member, then please reach out, and we'd love to have you get involved. And if there's anything that LPC can do for you, please just reach out at any time, and be happy to help in any way that I can. And I'm really excited for our program today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stacy. Yes, I highly want to encourage you guys too. If you've not signed up to be on a committee of LPC, that's just such a great way to get plugged in and to get to know people better. I've made some of my dearest friends by getting involved in an LPC committee over the years. And so we won't talk about how many years I've been serving on committees, but it's been several years, and I've made several great friends along the way. So there are tons of opportunities. And if you don't know what committee or where to get plugged in, just let Stacy know that. Or feel free to reach out to me as well, and I'd be happy to help share some ideas. Of course, I think the education committee is a great committee to get involved in to help put these on. But I do encourage anybody with ideas, never hesitate to share. You don't have to be on our committee to share topics or speaker ideas or things that you think would be fun to listen to in these chats. So with that, I'll quit talking about all these other things, and we'll get down to what we're here for. I'd like to introduce you to Tim Steinbeck. He is a 33-year veteran in the printing industry, and he is going to talk about how he got his start. He grew up in a small farm community in Missouri, and he has since become, what's the right word? An industry icon when it comes to printing. He is an expert, and that's why we're all here to glean from him. I think I can speak for a few others on here. I know that maybe we don't know as much about this as we should, and there might be some opportunities that we're missing or things we're not taking advantage of. So he's going to maybe, if you would, maybe start off and tell us a little bit more about your background, Tim, and then launch into your topic. But you can share your background in a more fascinating way than I can, I'm sure.
I'm not sure I've ever been called an icon before. I haven't been called other four-letter words, but I've been in the print industry since 1990. I've been an LPC member since 1990 when I first got into the printing business. And over the years, through continuing education and some other things, I have had to bite the bullet and learn a lot about the United States Postal Service, way more than I've ever wanted to know. And all of the classes of mail that deal with magazines and publications and direct mail. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the classes of mail. I will open it up for questions at the end of this because it is a weighty and a lot of detailed information topic. And I know we've got some limited time. So the classes of mail essentially are first class, periodical, pre-sort standard or marketing mail, and then postcard mail. We can probably throw a subclass in international mail into that as well. First class mail would essentially be postcards, letters, flats, or priority mail. All of those have different rules and regulations to go with them. That is the most expensive form of mail. It is also the fastest delivery. So if you have a sale catalog that you're wanting to get out or a piece of information that you're wanting to get out, typically first class mail is how you're going to do that. A postcard can be up to a 6x9 inch format now. It used to be just a 4x6, but they have expanded the ways to do that. Letters are up to 6x10.5, and then flats are essentially magazines. So then you can also put any of those into a priority mail envelope, which is the fastest delivery, but unlike what the post office says overnight, that is not a guarantee. A lot of you are probably more familiar with periodical mail because if you're doing a publication, that's 90% of the time how it's going to mail. That also has rules and regulations, and the way they charge for periodical mail is based on how many zones it crosses, the weight of the piece itself, and your advertising percentage. So it is the second fastest delivery available, but it has more rules and regulations. If you are a publication, you can only run up to 75% advertising in any periodical publication. If you are a nonprofit, that drops down to 25%. The delivery time, as stated by the post office, is roughly 5 to 7 days for periodical mail, but it is audited mail, which means that if you are running a periodical publication, you have to keep records of who is getting it, how much it costs. So if you're a membership-based organization, there has to be a cost designated of your membership to be able to mail at periodical rates. You also have to have at least 51% of that being paid. So if you're a for free publication or a free distribution publication, you don't qualify as periodicals. There are 4 or 5 different levels of periodical, and I won't go over all the categories because it doesn't really pertain as much to you all. The last one is pre-sort standard or marketing mail. That is strictly weight-based. It is also the slowest form of mail, but is probably the most commonly used for catalogs and direct mail pieces. The stated delivery from the post office on that also says 5 to 7 days. That's false. You're lucky if you can get it in 7 to 10, depending on where you are. And we being in the agriculture industry, most of those are rural. So it's probably going to err on the side of the longer delivery than the shorter delivery. The last kind is postcard mail. And as I said before, you can go up to a 6x9 and still go at postcard rate, which is actually lower than first class, but it also slows down the handling as well. So your weight limitation on a letter is 3.5 ounces. If you're going pre-sort standard or marketing mail, if you're going first class, it's 3 ounces. There is no weight limitation on periodical mail. On pre-sort standard mail, the weight limitation is 1 pound, and then it kicks you into what is called bound printed matter, which slows it down even further. So if you've got a couple of 100-page publication or catalog out there, and you go over 1 pound, depending on the paper you're on, you will be going as bound printed matter publication. So that's the quick overview. Nonprofit has a completely different set of rules for lots of things, and again, too numerous to mention. So I'm open to questions on all these, or if I didn't cover something really quickly that you want to talk about, I would love to field some questions, and we'll go through each of those as we get them. Nothing.
It's quiet right now. So let me
It is quiet
just
right now.
ask. Yeah, sometimes it takes us a while. So what do you think is one of the biggest opportunities when it comes to postage that publications don't take advantage of? Are there missed opportunities or ways that publications could change their practices to, experience
Absolutely.
more opportunity?
If you can bundle, so if you're running a magazine and you have a sale catalog, instead of mailing it as a separate piece, you can bundle that with your periodical in a poly bag or an envelope, and it reduces the postage weight for that. So there are things called supplements to and ride-alongs that can go with periodical mail. And I will use a current client as a prime example. They have a monthly magazine, but they will almost always have 2 to 3 sale catalogs going in with it. So as a supplement to, you are paying a reduced rate as opposed to mailing those 3 or 4 sale catalogs as standalones, because more than likely those are either going to go as pre-sort standard or as first class. And you're getting the second most optimal delivery at the same time as you would be getting from, say, mailing at first class, but better than you would be mailing it at marketing mail or pre-sort standard.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody
Tim.
else?
Yeah, I have a question. It's Sheila Grabowski,
Hi, Sheila.
and I probably missed this early on, but what is the standard mail time for like pre-sort?
The post office is stating it at 5 to 7 days, and those are basically working days, because they're not going to include Sunday, even though they do sometimes do Sunday delivery. The rule of thumb we have seen is you can probably add a day to 2 days to that standard. Through COVID and everything else, the post office has lost as many employees as everybody else, have a hard time replacing those workers. And while they are fairly automated, there's still a lot of basically human work involved, including the actual delivery. And on a pre-sort standard piece, each post office it hits can actually sit on it for up to 3 days before processing the mail. They will process first class mail, periodical mail, priority mail ahead of pre-sort standard or marketing mail. So it's the last piece to get touched. And it just depends on how efficient the post offices it goes through are. So if I'm mailing something from Jefferson City, say to Denver, it could pass through 3 post offices on the way, and each post office can sit on it for up to 3 days.
Thank
Tim,
you.
I have
And a
question.
follow up to the
Wait, go ahead,
question.
Sheila.
Sorry. Going back to if you're bundling, is it best to bundle that pre-sort, or do you need to move that to a different?
That's only for periodical.
Oh, periodical is the only way you
Yeah.
can bundle.
So,
Okay.
so pre-sort is strictly weight-based mail.
Okay.
So the heavier the piece, the more the postage is. If you are a periodical publication, and it has to be a publication, it has to have a stated frequency of at least 4 times a year. And it is, again, audited mail. So each periodical has to file in the issue closest to October what is called a statement of ownership, which is basically an audit of how many copies you've printed, how many copies you've mailed, how many copies are free distribution, how many copies come back to your office to be handed out later or recycled or whatever happens to them. So periodical is the only one that you can really bundle with, because first class and pre-sort standard are both strictly weight based.
Tim, I have a question. What do you think is one of the more common misconceptions about mailing that your clients may have, or maybe mistakes that those of us who don't know that much about the mailing side are making?
Typically speed of delivery. We know what the post office publishes as delivery times, and very rarely are those actual. There are certainly cases into urban areas where the delivery is fast, because typically those are larger postal facilities. They're set up more automated. But as things get farther and farther out into the rural areas, it becomes a little tougher to get them in hand. So if I'm mailing something to Chicago compared to someplace in Wyoming, the people in Chicago are typically going to get it faster than the people in Wyoming, just because of the efficiencies of the systems that they're going through. Now, having said that, it all depends on the post office, because I also have somebody that is literally 2.5 hours away from our facility, and they have a board member in the Baltimore, Maryland area as well. And this is a periodical, and for some reason, the board member in Baltimore gets it before the board member that's 2.5 hours away in the state of Missouri from us gets it. So we're not sure if somebody's reading it on the way and then just delivering it when they're done with it, or, and I have several horror stories I can tell you about that as well.
I'd love to hear one if you have time.
So I used to print a magic magazine, and we polybagged it to mail it with a label sheet. And one of their subscribers complained that the people in his neighborhood were getting theirs before he got his. And they finally asked him, well, what kind of shape is the polybag in? And the guy said, polybag? There's no polybag. It just shows up in my mailbox. So somebody was opening it and reading it, and when they got done reading it, then they would deliver.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Any other questions, guys?
Any more questions out there? I can get pretty deep in the weeds with some of this. I just didn't know how much information you all want to try to absorb about everybody's favorite topic, mailing.
So Tim, this is Angie. I'm thinking about or putting on my seed stock producer hat in our family sale catalog. What are you telling your clients today? Like, is the best option to go first class, especially, or where is that time frame that you think producers should be considering today for their sale catalogs because of the post office?
If you can do it as a letter, in other words, so you can do a stitched publication, catalog, whatever, at 6 by 10.5, as long as it stays under 3 ounces, you can mail that piece first class, but it goes at letter rate, which is probably half the cost of mailing it at a flat rate. So you can kind of play with sizes. You can kind of play with page counts and dimensions to reduce your postage and increase your delivery speed. If you're doing a 6 by 10.5, let's say a 24 page, it does have to be tabbed. So you'll have 2 tabs at the leading edge, 1 tab at the trailing edge of the piece. But the cost savings in postage alone more than offsets the tabbing costs and the mailing costs. And again, part of it depends on the quantity that you're also sending out. So to do a full mailing for first class or pre-sort standard, you have to have 200 pieces or 50 pounds of mail. So most of the time, if you're sending out to a list, you're going to have that. If you're going to a smaller list than that, say 100 to 150, your better bet is to mail it first class. Anybody else out there?
I do see some gurus of mailing out here. I see some people that are like me who might not be, but I think there are a few. Do any of you guys have questions? Any challenges that you've run into? Or crazy stories that you'd like to share?
Hi, Tim. This is Cassie.
Hi.
So one question I had, or just something I have a little bit of experience with, is when I previously worked in an association and you take your mailing list for your publication, and there could be, based on how the membership is set up, one farm, one location could technically need to receive 4 issues of the membership provided publication. Can you kind of walk through the mail merging process of merging and purging those lists to make sure that one farm or one location isn't getting 4 issues of your magazine?
Yeah, you can merge purge by a handful of different ways depending on how the list is set up. So if you have member numbers, we can do it by checking the member numbers and making sure there's no duplicates. You can do it by name, address, zip. Keeping your list clean is probably the easiest way to do that, because if you have a Tim Steinbeck and a Timothy Steinbeck, same address, sometimes a merge purge won't catch that because the names are different enough. So if we do it in that vein by name, address, zip, and it's all the same, then we know to take one of those 2 out. So a lot of it comes down to how you want to sort it. I will tell you, though, that if you delivered 4 to the same 5-digit zip, you actually get a discount on your postage for that. But it costs you an additional 3 magazines and additional 3 magazines worth of postage. But so when we run through CAS and PAVE certification on our end, when we process lists, any copies that are a common 3-digit zip, in the case of Jefferson City 651, everything that goes into 651, we bundle together and they get a discount. If it's 65101 and there's multiple copies going to 65101 that can be bundled together. So if you're sending 10 copies to Jefferson City, Missouri, it's all the same zip code. You actually get a discount for those. So how you set up the list is very, very important, and where it comes out of. Typically, we have to NCOA everything we mail, which is National Change of Address. And that service is provided. And we can send you then back a list of bad addresses based on what the post office considers a bad address. It may actually be a good address, and you may tell us to go ahead and mail it because they've been receiving mail at that location for 20 years. But for some reason, either they've redistrict or have done something different, and the pieces will get there, but it shows up on the bad address list. So the way you sort and the way we purge is based on what kind of rules you want us to follow.
It's Jordan in Texas. I'm glad you brought up the new or the change of address listing. That's something that we've used historically to help clean our list, but on the back end of a mailing. So I guess, you kind of addressed that you have to take some of that with a grain of salt, but is that typically something that should be provided before the mailing? Like, is that something that can be ran and then provided to the client and then decided on if you want to pursue the new address or continue using the old one, or does that come always after the mailing from USPS?
It actually comes from us because we have to run it through their national change of address system. So from our end, when we process the list, we can send you that before we mail if you get it to us early enough, and then you can purge those names and send it back to us if you choose. More often than not, it's after the mailing because we don't often get lists early enough to do it.
That's everyone's problem, right?
So, well, because everybody wants to hold on to the list to the last minute so they can get any changes in or any additions before they mail. And we understand that perfectly. So our typical production schedule, we really don't require the list until about 3 days before we're ready to mail. And at that point, it's almost too late to get it back to you guys after we've done NCOA on it and then get it back again cleaned up. So kind of by default, we do it after the fact.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Now, having said that, it may be a little different from provider to provider. So your printer may be doing something a little differently than we do. But we run roughly 400 periodical publications through here. So we kind of have it down to a fine art. Are any of you out there running a publication with a circulation over 15,000? Maybe? Because
You can,
yeah, we
yeah,
can
I was
get
like,
into
feel free to like raise your hand with your little chat thing, because I know I think there are some of you out there. I would say yes, Tim. I think we have people with that high of circulation.
Well, and the reason I ask is because depending on your circulation and the provider you're using, there are opportunities to co-mail or co-mingle. And what that is essentially there are several companies out there that will accept publications from multiple different printers and then run them through a sortation system where they do the same thing that I was talking about. They're firm bundling or 3-digit or 5-digit pre-sorts. And if you're running a line of 35 different magazines and they're barcoding them and they're reading each of the barcodes and making bigger bundles, then the discounts are heavier. So we do a publication that is actually a letter that runs about 20,000, and we commingle those because it cuts their postage, even with the fee going to the commingling center, by about 20%. Now, the downside to it is your circulation has to be in that 15 to 20 to 30,000 range for it to be worth it for what the commingling, co-mailing companies are charging. Because what they are essentially doing is you may be getting a 10 or 15% postage discount. They're taking a percentage of that for them to make money and then leaving you with the rest. So the particular publication that I'm referencing now is saving roughly 20% on their catalog mailings, and they do 2 a month. So their net savings ends up being $3,000 or $4,000 per mailing over the lifespan of their publication for the year. Now, for anything probably 10,000 and under, it doesn't become worth it enough just because there's not enough pieces to make bigger bundles from.
Tim, you've mentioned some really good cost saving tips, which I think in this climate especially is just so valuable. I wondered if you had any other kind of quick tips, even if they're specific to one type of print project or mailing that you might want to share that people might not know about, but it's a good way to save money.
Well, and if you're announcing a sale, postcard is always a good route to go because it's fairly quick delivery and it's less expensive. And since they've expanded the size from a 4x6 to a 6x9, the problem with postcard had always been that you can't get enough information on a postcard and still have an address block and have content. Now with up to a 6x9 being a postcard, you've got more space front and back to do that. The post office requires a 4-inch by 2-inch area, white area, or label or whatever to be able to read their barcode and automate sort. So when you expand the postcard to 6x9, that gives you essentially half of the front and all of the back for information. So if it's something quick that you need done, that you just need to get information out, that's a lot cheaper than doing a saddle stitched piece. Now trifolds can go at letter as well. So you can take an 8.5 by 11 and trifold it. It does have to be tabbed, but only 2 tabs this time. And you can still get an 8.5 by 11 sale flyer out as a letter at either first class or pre-sort standard and save the money. Again, because it is weight based. You can go up to 3.5 ounces on a pre-sort letter, 3 ounces on a first class letter. So those are 2 opportunities. If it's just quick information that you need to get out, not extensive, where you're having multiple pages or a saddle stitch piece, or even a perfect bound piece, then those are the 2 cheaper ways to go.
Hey, Tim, this is Scarlett.
Hi.
Hi. Hey, can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the general guidelines if you want to do a ride along? I mean, we don't do that a lot with our mag, like if you want to put something in with the poly bag with your mag, but we've done a couple of postcards and it's like one other thing, but I didn't know if there were some general guidelines. It seems like every time we want to do one, we always have all these questions about what makes it more expensive or what change it, if something will change it regarding our add to ed ratio and that kind of thing.
Any ride along is considered, well, depending on whether you have editorial in the ride along. If it's a sale catalog, it's strictly all advertising, and they will count that against your add edit ratio for the publication. The only really other rule involved is it cannot be bigger than the host piece. In other words, dimensionally, it can't be significantly larger than the magazine. Now, if you're doing an 8.5 by 11 magazine, you can do an 8.5 by 11 sale catalog. You can probably get away with an 8.5 by 11 sale catalog, even if your publication's 8 1/8 by 10 7/8 or whatever. As long as it's not significantly bigger. The other rule is if it's significantly smaller, it can't polybag on the side that we're labeling on because it'll slide around in the polybag and they don't want it to cover up the address. Now, the way around that is to put a label on the outside of the bag or to use an opaque polybag. And then the opaque polybag can be addressed on directly. Excuse me. And I am more than willing to field calls from anybody if you have deeper questions. I'm happy to give you my email address and my phone number, whether you work with us or not, because I like talking about mail.
I will say that's true. Tim has answered many a dumb question of mine before, so he didn't even seem to mind that much.
Well, I love it. And I'm so grateful for you taking the time, Tim, to share with us on this topic. It's definitely a first for us. We've never talked about that before in all of our years of doing it, and it's about time we did. So I'm grateful for the extra time you held for us to be able to do this. And I'm really glad that you guys could all join us, and wanted to let you know about our next coffee and collaboration. It's on October 18th, and the topic is going to center around telling hard stories, talking about sensitive issues. And I've never actually been part of one of these myself yet, but I'm going to bring along Madison Caldwell, who's a young woman that I wrote a hard story about a couple of years ago. And we are actually going to team up for the first time to talk about our experience. So it'll be a little bit of a different approach. I'm not sure how it'll work, but she's game and I'm game to give it a shot. And we're excited that Lisa Mosier at Kansas State is going to be kind of guiding us through a conversation and moderating it. She's had me speak to one of her classes several times on the topic, or different classes several times. And so we were thinking it might be kind of fun to try that approach here to actually see what an interview subject, how they feel about the process. So love to have you guys tune in for that one on October 18th. And we're in the process of working on our November chat, but we've got that listed as November 29th. So those are a few dates that you could put on your calendar. Does anybody else have any announcements or questions that they'd like to bring up at this time?
Jennifer, I do want to touch on one more thing before
Sure.
we're done here, because I know that a lot of you probably have Canadian members and or international members. And international mail is a whole different kind of kettle of fish. So your choices kind of become airmail, or we typically go through what is called a remail service. So there are a number of different foreign, what they call consolidators. So getting entry into Canada is typically through a consolidator. First class mail will deliver through Canada Post. Periodical mail will deliver through Canada Post, but it's painfully slow. So what we typically do is polybag and send those pieces to a remailing company called Ascendia or International Delivery Solutions or APC. There are any different number of those, and they will fly them into Canada and drop them into Canada Post. So same thing with the foreign mail, which also is very hard to get to people and even more impossible to track. Those are typically done through what is called international surface airlift or international priority air, where they are flown into the host countries and dropped into their postal system. And as much as I dog on the USPS, here, it is still the most efficient postal system in the world. And there are postal systems that are not overly friendly to anything coming out of their country, Australia being one, Japan being another. Pacific Rim is very hard to deliver to. European countries are a little easier. Canada, Mexico are even easier. But if you have international subscribers, and if anybody ever says that I was not promoting print, if you have international subscribers and you can give them a digital version of your magazine, it saves you tons of money in the long run. And foreign mail is also weight-based, and it doesn't matter what class.
That's excellent advice.
Now I'm done.
Now you're done. Well, I don't want to cut you off. I don't want to cut you off. We've got a couple minutes, but anyone else? All right. Well, we will feel free to reach out to Tim. He's very approachable, as are all of our members in LPC. It's just kind of the way we are and the way we want to be. So we're always here to help each other out. If there's anything that you need, don't hesitate again to reach out to Stacy and Katrina, our president. They have shared their information over in the chat as well to make it a little easier. So with that being said, we'll look forward to seeing you guys next month for Coffee and Collaboration. Hope you have a wonderful day.